About egocentrism. By Anatoly Protopopov. Egocentrism is inability to wish to put oneself in another's place or to get in another's shoes. Egoism is unwillingness to divest oneself of one's own interests. There are the terms reflection and empathy in psychology. The first term means the ability to adequate self-evaluation in eyes of other people. The second term means ability to apprehend emotions of others. Egocentric has both abilities diminished. Non-egocentric person sometimes is called reflective, but this is not quite correct. I do not allege that there are no egocentric persons among men. Moreover, the champions of egocentrism have to be looked only among men, but it is more typical for women in average. Whatever is said about women's emotionality, empathy is the ability to evaluate the emotions of others correctly but not intemperance of one's own reactions on the environment. The ability to read gestures and mimicry helps to read the emotions of others, but in order to read the mimicry one has to want doing this in the first place. Meanwhile, the surrounding world and especially the inner world of the others is not interesting for egocentric. He is interested only in the world of oneself, right up to self-admiration. This is indirectly proven by women's love of mirrors. Here is the following anecdotal scene for illustration. Honey. In such weather a dog owner will not kick his dog out. Egocentric person can answer, then go without a dog. Egoist will probably respond, you aren't made of sugar. You will not get dissolved. Here is another scene. A bus stopped abruptly. Egocentric women yelled, driver. You are carrying a human cargo. Men, what is a crazy person running in front of the bus? Egocentric did not even try to put oneself in another person's shoes or understand what his or her problem is all about. The point is not in the fact that he is incapable of doing this. It simply did not come to his mind. On the contrary, egoist understood everything but deliberately disregarded the troubles of another one. Egoism is one of the important demonstrations of a high rank. Egocentric is not necessarily a nasty person. He is just insensitive. For example, he can pour out tons of kindness on the person who does not need this without feeling its irrelevance. And also oppressing somebody he sincerely does not notice the inconvenience which he causes. As a sort of this feature we can mention the extreme restraining of egocentric people in expression of gratitude to the other people. And egocentric can simultaneously be an egoist, what a horror. It is determinate that egocentric people are robbed in a crowd, transport, shops, more often and they do not notice or feel anything at the very moment. It is proven that propensity to egocentrism is handed down genetically from generation to generation, even among men, meaning that reasonably deep and ancient brain structures are responsible for this. In ages from 3 to 5 years egocentric children usually do not ask why, or they do it very rarely, although their development does not fall behind from their peers in any other way. They are not so interested in surrounding world as in their own world. From the biological point of view, feminine egocentrism is justified, and moreover, more or less normal. If every female is objectively irreplaceable, then nature forbids women from thinking seriously of anything but their own interests or interests of their children, as well as concealing their problems. For this males are especially created. Try mentally to change the roles of old man and old woman in mentioned above a fairy tale about a fisherman and a golden fish. Can't make it. Don't you say this cannot happen? Correct, this would have been too untruthful even for a folktale. Since the folklore is already touched, it is worth to pay attention that if a fairy tale presents such character as stepmother, then by all means she is nasty. Evil-minded stepfather is not quite typical character for folktales. The reason is not in malignancy itself but in absence of concern for the other people and stepchildren's needs. The fact that mass media much more often reveals cases about stepfather's brutality is the result of the mentioned above men's presumption of guilt. Folktales are more reliable statistically. If a folktale does not adequately model the relationships between people, it will be not a fairy tale that can teach children about real life but an idle fantastic absurdity. The thesis about statistical reliability of folklore is correct, although its correctness varies for all kind of folklore such as anecdotes, verses, and etc. Why does unbearable working environment quite often exist in purely women teams or staffs? Because nobody wants to make any sacrifices for the sake of others. Lower egocentrism can be seen among women who drive car. Driving a car in a traffic is impossible without constant forecasting of the other driver's actions and concern about predictability of one's own actions. That is incompatible with egocentrism. Women's unwillingness to use rear-view mirrors became household word. That's why the average egocentric woman feels quite uncomfortably behind a driving wheel, writing this off to the boorishness of male drivers. Again, here is a presumption of male guilt, and therefore decline to drive voluntarily. However, if she drives a car, of course, it is worth to see how well, then the level of her egocentrism is lower than average. But this does not guarantee the absence of any other imperfections or weaknesses. However, this egocentrism in reasonable doses is included as a necessary piquant flavor in the notion of femininity.